You're listening to the Real Women in Business podcast. I'm your host, Cass McCrory, and in this podcast, we highlight women in all kinds of businesses. For yourself, someone else, full-time, part-time, overtime hustle, together we will learn from and with one another. And if we get it right, it'll lift us all. Let's get into it. Friends, I am so excited to introduce you to Suzi Russell today. Suzi is a moon sister of mine. She is a nurse at heart, a mother, a nurturer. She's talks about the range of her career and kind of the space that it took to create it. She gets into some powerful magic and medicine around what we do with our lives and how we evolve as humans. This is a deep one. Get a cup of tea and join Suzi and I. Suzi, would you share a few words about who you are and what you do in this world?
I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I work at a small regional hospital in Australia, and I've recently transitioned to become a nurse educator in the academic space at our local university, completely by accident, apparently, because we know there are no accidents. But that's literally what I do. And I have a side gig as a local producer and director of community theatre.
And your mom?
I am. I have 3 sons, my beautiful sons, who are now 24, 21, and 18, and who are very indulgent of all of my foibles, working pastime. They're very indulgent of their mother.
And you're based in?
I live in a small town called, it's a small city, I suppose, Wollongong. It's the 3rd biggest city, I believe, in New South Wales. So I live about 90 kilometres south of Sydney, right in between the mountains and the ocean.
Nice. And so seasonally, right now, you're in the midst of winter?
Winter? Yes, so we're just approaching the winter solstice this weekend.
Yes. I always find that very challenging because I just kind of assume that everybody's in that same summer mind space. So do you have a break in the summer season there?
Technically, we're supposed to. Hasn't really happened. So I went to bed one day and it was 40 degrees and I woke up and it was 20 degrees. I'm like, what's happened now? It's freezing. But ironically, I was born and brought up in England, and I lived the first 28 years of my life in England. And I have never been colder since I've been living in Australia during the winter.
Really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But I'm currently in Melbourne today, and Melbourne is known as a city that has 4 seasons in one day.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, so we've already had wind. I've been here since about 5 o'clock this afternoon. We've had wind, we've had rain, and it's been reasonably mild. So we've covered 3 out of those 4 bases.
Well, you've got some hours left to go.
I think so.
You'll probably hit that 4.
Probably on the way home.
So you alluded to this, but I want to dig into this a lot because I have been a very blessed witness of your journey of being a nurse and now transitioning into a nurse educator role. And I'd love for you to say a little bit about kind of how you came into the field of nursing and then how that's evolved for you.
I've wanted to be a nurse since I was 4.
Wow.
Since I was 4, the only thing I wanted to do was to be a nurse or an actor at 4 years old. That's all I've ever wanted. And I never quite know why I wanted to be a nurse. And to be perfectly honest, I still don't. But I'm still practicing and I still love it. And it's exactly where I'm supposed to be. But I have a very clear memory of at 4 years old, standing at the Florence Nightingale Museum in London, St Thomas Hospital, looking at Florence Nightingale's facsimile of her uniform and thinking to myself, I want to wear that. Not that I wanted to put my hands on people and help them from where they're at, but I want to wear that. But it was something that never left me. It never did. I never had the confidence to pursue it. When you're in the 80s and you're at school and you have careers advisors and they say, oh, well, that's lovely, Suzi, but really, are you smart enough to be a nurse?
Oh, wow.
Are you pretty enough to be an actor? I know perhaps maybe, working in a shop might be good for you. And whilst working in a shop is amazing and fantastic for people who love to be of service in that regard, it never resonated with me. So I didn't have the confidence to pursue it. But
Wow.
I always still wanted to do it.
So then where did that come from? How did you get into the headspace of kind of rejecting what you'd been told to pursuing it?
You get a bit over that victim mentality, don't you? It gets a bit boring. Oh, like, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. And there's always that little voice which is like, just be quiet, for goodness sake. You're not bored with that same old narrative. Isn't it about time you dropped that? Like, look what you've done since you left school. You went to drama school. You worked as an actor. You had a family. Why can't you be a nurse? Like, what if? What if? So I took the what ifs, and this was after I'd migrated to Australia, and I set the entrance exam to start as a trainee enrolled nurse, which in Australia is in our hierarchy, and I loathe the term hierarchy in nursing, but it's that's just how it is. Love to change that in the future. An enrolled nurse, and got to the interview part, pass the literacy, pass the numeracy, and I sat down to have this interview, and I was asked that question, why did you want to be a nurse? So I told them the story. When I was 4, in front of Florence Nightingale, and there's her, and I wanted to wear that dress, and I could hear myself, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But there were smiles across the table, and two of the panel just laughed openly when I said, look, I still don't know why I want to be a nurse, but I'm here. And I'm 32, not 4. So
there must be something in there.
There must be something here. And apparently that's what got me over the door, got me into the program. So it flowed since then, like everything that I've every step that I've taken since then. And you kind of work out pretty quickly when you're knocking at the wrong door in terms of nursing, because there's an area of nursing for everybody. And it's almost futile to go in with a fixed idea of where you want to be, because I was going to be a kids nurse. I was going to be the best children's nurse that ever lived. And I got that placement during my training for 4 weeks on the children's ward. And I was so excited, and I got there and I was ready to be the best kids nurse that I could be. And I hated every second of those 4 weeks.
I love that you are talking about this, because I think this is the story of all of our lives. We have this intention. We're like, I'm going to do this, with no real clarity on why.
It was ego, right? It was complete. And yes. I know this now because this has happened to me twice in my career. And I was so humbled one day during my training, whilst I was on children's ward, and they said, look, there are no patients here. There's, you're a bit superfluous to our requirements, but this ward over the way really needs an extra pair of hands. And they said, look, it's difficult and it's hard, and it's, it's not a great ward, and the staff are a bit, and, nursing is like they eat their young, and that ward has a reputation for that. So I literally took about 15 steps from one side of the corridor to the other, and I hit this ward, and I was asked immediately to go and help with a patient who was probably at her most vulnerable, and she had colostomy bags, and she had open wounds, and there were all these smells, and it was hard, and it was confronting, and I'm like, I'm home.
Wow.
As I'm in this bathroom with manner of bodily fluids on my clothes and on my feet, and all thoughts of becoming a children's nurse had completely gone. And that was the ward that I ended up working on once I qualified. And I specialized in vascular nursing, these beautiful 90-year-old men who with uncontrolled diabetes, who had amputated limbs and big open diabetic ulcers, who were wonderful human beings, but it's not a sexy specialty.
That is just, I've never heard this story in all of the times that we've talked and everything. I've never heard this story, and I'm so glad to know it today, because I think that, and I talk about this in an episode with Stephanie Hayes around the necessary mess.
Oh,
and yeah. It's so amazing, because when you step into the role that you're meant to play, the necessary mess becomes the beautiful landscape.
Do you know what? And this was a beautiful landscape of stomas and colostomies and amputations and wound care and the most generous nurses who were like, we like this Suzi Russell. We like her. Let's teach her some things. Let's show her some things. Let's really take her under our wing and teach her. And I was like a sponge. Because what did I know? I know how to disseminate a play. I know how to put on a play. I know how to raise, well, no one ever really knows how to raise children, but that's what I'd done. And I was in such an environment where I could be 100% authentically me, and learning who that person was outside of motherhood and outside of the theatre was such a joy. And my nursing practice, my authentic nursing practice, is almost like Frankenstein's monster in a way. It's been sewn together from information and learning and teachings I've had from the two women who gave me the opportunity, Nan Head and Anne Smythe, like two amazing women who were like, let's give this girl a shot, to, you know, older nurses who would teach me with their stories, to my own peers who would teach me because they would train slightly differently. And it was all an invitation. I see this now, an invitation to layer my own practice.
I think that is true in every work.
Yeah.
That it is all an invitation. And this podcast too, it is an invitation to say, is there something that I need to integrate and learn in this moment from this interaction?
Yeah.
That is the work. And I put that in, you know, air quotes, because that's what it's about.
And it's look, it's hard, and nursing is hard. Make no bones about that. It's difficult and it's challenging, and the system is horrendous. And I'm very lucky that I work in a country that has subsidized healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for that. And I work for a public hospital, so I get to go in and give all this amazing care that people get for free. Like, what a gift that is, to be a part of something. And I recognize the system is awful and horrendous, and I'm very lucky at the moment that I've been able to take a step back from clinical work, having fallen into this amazing opportunity headfirst. But being able to grow as a clinician and as an empath and as a light worker. And the more you care for your patients, the more you learn how to care for your colleagues. And that's where the real gold and the real joy is for me, is to be able to be in service of my sisters.
Amazing. You talked about something else really briefly in there that I want to dig out more around, and that's the role that theater has continued to play in your life. I think so frequently, and I want to just frame this a little bit, so frequently I hear from women in particular that they'd pursue their passion when their kids are grown, they retire, these other things, and they're holding themselves back from the enjoyment of something that they're passionate about now, for a host of unknown reasons. And I'd love to know kind of how if you've done that too, if you've held yourself back at one point, why, and how you got yourself through it to a place of being so passionately and fully involved in it.
Oh, it comes back a lot to conditioning when I was a kid. So I grew up I was born in 1970. So my mother was still of that era where you stayed at home and you looked after the children. And my job, particularly in my family, my father's side mainly, my job was to marry well. That was my job. I was to marry well, I was to have children, and I was to raise them and be grateful for that, to cook, to clean, to do all of the things that women are supposed to do. And that didn't kind of work out quite so well, particularly in terms of the marriage part. And I use theatre as a way to not address the emotional needs of my relationship.
Oh.
And that's where ironically, that's where I really stepped into who I was as an actor, because I got to leave the house twice a week. And I work in community theatre. Like, I worked professionally for a couple of years in my late teens, early 20s before I got married. But in the town, the area that I live in, we are blessed with several companies. If you want to do musical theatre, you can do musical theatre. If you want to do straight theatre, you can do straight theatre. If you want to set up your own production company, put your own stuff on, you can do that too. I can't believe I get to do some of the stuff that I've done. But I use that as a way to escape what was happening at home.
Mm.
And when my children were old enough, after my marriage ended, well, I had no, bless my ex-husband, he's a good man, but I'd lost my built-in babysitter. So the kids came with me.
Oh.
And they're like, oh, so this is why my mother's out of the house twice a week. This is kind of good. I quite like this. And the older they've got, the more involved they've been. So my eldest son, Jake, if I'm working with Illawarra on Point Productions, he's my stage manager. He runs lights with me. He'll come and help out in any way around that. Gabriel will work backstage with me. He's my youngest son. He's 18, just turned 19. And he thoroughly involves the coming in and helping out behind the scenes. He's been on stage with me a couple of times as well, as has Jake. Thomas, my middle son, he's nearly 22. He's not as interested in it. He's got his own thing. He makes a lot of rap music quite well, actually. But they were so enthused with what I was doing. Like, well, why not take them with me?
Yes.
And they've really helped with that. Like, I used to pay Jake pocket money. I would pay him to help me run lines. So I'm like, I've got all these lines to learn. He's like, well, pocket money. That's amazing. So most children, many children earn their pocket money by doing chores around the house. The boys earn their pocket money by helping me run my lines.
I love that. I love how you just integrated it into, your mothering, and you really unlocked a world for them at the same time.
I hope so. I know that they did get to a stage where they're like, please, mother, please don't play any more dark and twisty characters, because I would bring that home. And I found that very difficult to disconnect between the character I was playing and real life.
Yeah, I can see how that would.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, please, Elizabeth Proctor, no more 1692. Oh, you're playing Medea, but she murdered her children. Please, mother, don't do this. So they prefer it when I work on the production side of things. Mostly they do.
I'd love to learn more about like how you balance, and how, and I think balance is an illusion, but like, how do you do the things that you do?
Look, you can't have it all. This is the big misconception. You can't have it all. You do the best with what you have at the time. That's it. That's been my secret, to recognize what I have and to go, so what's important to me in this moment, to me. And I think as mothers, there's a great big tendency for us to put ourselves a little bit down the list. Yeah. And I like to kind of switch it up a bit. Where am I going to put myself today? What would happen? Just what would happen if I put myself first today?
I think that question
go wrong. So what does putting yourself first look like? And I love that question.
That is an amazing question. And I think one that a lot of people would struggle with at first if they have not posed that question.
No. And I didn't start posing that question until I started asking it in my tutorial classes, when I started shifting across to the uni. Because as nurses, we cannot effectively nurse if our cup is half empty. We need to be filling up our own cup for all to be overflowing, flowing to this patient, to that patient, and to your nursing colleagues, and to your doctor colleagues, and to your allied health colleagues. So what fills your own cup? And that's very different for every single human being. Like, what works for me might not necessarily work for anybody else. And it's offering that invitation for people to give themselves permission to discover that.
I think that one thing I've seen, even just in the short time that I've been doing this podcast, is that when we get into the real tactical piece of it, like this is how I fill my cup. People have these aha moments of, oh, I could also try that on.
Yeah.
How do you fill your cup today?
I drove my son 900 kilometers from Wollongong to Melbourne for him to reconnect with his band members. That's how I filled my cup today.
And how did it do that? Like, what about it?
Your children cannot run from you when they are in a car for 9 hours.
Nice.
They cannot run. And you know, we shared stories about when he was a kid, when working with his brothers, you know, his memories of us as a family. Because when I was married, we never did much as a family. So listen to the things that Jake remembered. So there was a lot of laughter around that, and listening to his hopes for this reconnection with his bandmates, and the hopes that he has for himself as a musician and somebody who is creative, and watching his excitement grow as the kilometers ate up was really, really wonderful. We listened to a whole bunch of music, and of course I had my partner with me as well too, so he was privy to some news stories and some little snippets and insights of how we are as a family. And he's still here, so that's a good thing. But look, it was wonderful, and to have that like consolidated time with Jake was just wonderful to me today. And to see him grown up into a young man who, if I was his age, I would want to be his friend. He's a cool guy. And that's got nothing to do with how he's been brought up. It's who he fundamentally is as a human being.
And I think that the fact that you recognize the opportunity in the 900 kilometers, and you said yes to that as a human that wants to connect with this person that you gave birth to. And I applaud that. I think that's amazing. And it's an inspiration to me because you create such great space there.
But I also likewise with you, because I see your family and how you share your family on Instagram, and it's so humorous and funny and warm, and you manage to I feel so nurtured and wrapped up in this beautiful warm blanket whenever I see your posts with your children. And it makes me laugh a lot. I'm always with my boys. Look, my friend Cass, like this beautiful little girl called Leora, and she's just so great and so amazing. And it's really wonderful to me. So I get inspiration from seeing how other people parent as well.
I think that there's so much to learn in what you feel drawn to.
Yeah.
As a parent, I think every time, I feel really drawn to your story about the drive to help him fulfill a dream and a passion. It reminds me that I want to do more of that too, whether that's, when Braden was little, he was obsessed with City Hall. And so no idea why, really. Maybe Paw Patrol. I think Paw Patrol talks a lot about going to City Hall with the mayor, right? So maybe that's why. And one day we took a little adventure to go to City Hall, and we met Fritz, the mayor of our little town. And, we have these adventures to pursue their curiosities. And I love that. That's one of my favorite parts of being a parent, is to get to be a part of their curiosity.
Because it doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be grand. The happiest times I've had with my kids when they, and still now, like not even when they were growing up, I think more so as they moved into adolescence, was those really simple, tiny moments that may seem, and I recount these stories to people and they're like, what are you doing? You didn't send them to violin lessons. They didn't do this. You took them to see like a hardcore metal gig and then were happy with them crowd surfing. I'm like, I've never had a prouder moment than when, the lead singer from Day to Remember says, I want all the crowd surfers to surf on the crowd surfers because we're in Australia and that's what Australians do. And I look down and I see Thomas lying on his back above the crowd with Jake standing on Thomas. I'm like, that's my boys.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And the people will look at you like you're completely crazy, but that's what fills my cup.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that.
And that's okay. Tomorrow, my cup could be filled with something completely different.
Yes. I love your openness to that. I think I've always been very inspired by you and how you've always, anytime I've seen you in a place of dissatisfaction, it's always come from a place of, I'm looking for the best next step.
What else is there? Really, like, what else is there? The universe throws you nothing that you cannot handle.
And have you always believed that?
No. Because it's always, why is this happening to me? Why has this always happened to me? It's just terrible. It's really odd. And you get into that spiral of everything is awful. And I honestly don't know when it was that changed that for me, when I changed it to, okay, all right, I'm ready to listen. Why is this happening to me? Is it happening to me or is it happening for me?
That is a very powerful shift.
And that happened when I found myself, was 2008. I just separated from my husband. I was just decided to make the step to go from an enrolled nurse to a registered nurse. I just signed up for university. And there I was with 50% custody of these 3 tiny humans, a full-time study load, permanent night shift, a role in a production, and a miniature labradoodle.
A miniature labradoodle on top of everything.
Yeah, Dobby the house elf. This is what happens when you ask your children to name your pets. And you don't, I guess you do subconsciously invite that. But it's like, okay, so I can either sink and I can drop out of uni and, be an enrolled nurse and be happy with that and raise my kids. Or I can just see what happens. Just one semester, we'll see. Just one semester, we'll see what happens. Oh, okay, well, I did that. Oh, I did quite well. Maybe I am smart enough. And then you make your uni friends, your uni family. And, we're all aspiring nurses. So we've got a bit of mischief about us, a bit of gallows humor. And then they encourage you to step up. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm doing better than okay. Well, let's see what happens in second year. Oh, okay, so still got the 3 children. I still have the miniature labradoodle. I've still got a full-time study load. I have an unwell mother by this point. I can still do it. I can still do this. And that's how my time at university went. And that's when I think I really learned this is happening. This is legitimately happening for me. It's not happening to me. This is happening for me.
It's a really powerful shift. And you can feel it energetically.
Yeah.
The shift to victimhood and for learning and experimentation.
Yeah. And I think that the hilarious thing that happened after that, and I was that mature age student that was in the class who wanted to know the questions and always answered and was always that person. Like, I think the rest of the people probably would have been like, oh my goodness, I wish you would just be quiet. And then I became that student that got the new grad job that everybody wanted, over a lot of people who applied for that, because I was going to be the best scrub nurse in the world. Nobody, I wanted to be like Boki on Grey's Anatomy. I wanted to be that scrub nurse. Like, she was my absolute idol, and I was going to be amazing. And of course, you know what happened, don't you?
No.
I hated it.
Of course you did.
And I was terrible at it. Absolutely terrible. And I didn't enjoy it. And I was coming from a difficult, my mother had died just before I started my new grad year. So I was carrying a bunch of grief with a bunch of guilt because I got this job that I wasn't enjoying. And then about halfway through the year, again, it shifted for me. And I learned that, being a scrub nurse to me wasn't that great, big, sexy, hardcore thing that everyone wants, the ED nurse or the ICU nurse, or scrub nurse. It was that person who kind of went, in recovery. So that you've extubated them and they're just waking up and they've got a lot of pain on board. And how can I help you? I can give you some pain relief. Turns out I'm really good at that. But the nuance of pain management, and I'm like, hang on a second, I was supposed to be a kids nurse and that was really sexy, but then it wasn't. And I was supposed to be a scrub nurse and pain management isn't sexy. Is it? Actually, it really is. But for me, it was. And once I realized that I was good at it and I enjoyed it, and I started asking questions, once I opened myself up to learning, everyone wanted to throw their knowledge at me.
I want you to repeat that a little bit. And I want you to dig into it more. Once you opened up, everybody gave it to you.
Everybody gave it to me. It was like, this is great. How do I learn more? And once you go, show me more, the universe is like, okay, have it. We've been waiting for this. We have been waiting for you to open yourself up because we've got it all for you.
But you have to get to the place where you're like, show me more.
Yeah.
That's some powerful medicine.
In the most of course it comes in the most unexpected places, in the most unexpected ways. But the rest of my new grad year was so valuable to me, and I made some incredible friends, again, in really weird places. It wasn't a massively conducive environment for nurse support, but my colleagues who are anaesthetists, I met up with them again in the public hospital when I transitioned back over there, and they're like, this is amazing. What are you doing here? And I'm like, I've just done this and I've just done that. And like, come over here and do this with us. Come and work with us a bit more. And I'm like, that'd be great. I love anaesthetists. They're my favorite medical, and my favorite doctors are anaesthetists.
As a person that's had 4 children, I also find that to be true. They are my favorite.
I think they're wonderful and brilliant, and I'm very lucky because occasionally I'll duck back and I'll do some casual shifts back in theatres in recovery, where we work very closely with the anaesthetists, and the majority of the anaesthetists in high positions now are women.
Interesting.
Yes, yeah, and the whole vibe over the last 3 years has really, really shifted. And the women that I work with are brilliant and wonderful and funny and inspiring and are brilliant women. And I love that. And I love occasionally being in an operating theatre, and I'll pause for a minute. I'll look around and the patient will be a female. The anaesthetist will be female. The surgeon, the surgeon's assistant, scrub nurse, scout nurse, anaesthetic, the whole team is female, and that shifts the vibe a lot. And anecdotally, those patients actually recover better.
Really?
Yeah, anecdotally.
That's very interesting. I think that there's space for real study in that.
Yeah.
There's something nurturing about working with and for and around women, that because I come from technology consulting, like that's largely my background, is that I've worked with consultants who are predominantly male. There's been a handful, like maybe literally 2 handfuls of women that I've worked with in the space. And as that's grown, fulfillment and work has shifted too.
Yeah. I love it. It's and there's no hierarchy when you get a bunch of women together in a room who are there in service for that person under the drapes. there is no hierarchy, because we all have our own areas of expertise, and we are there to support each other in what we're supposed to be doing. Whether you are manipulating laparoscopic instruments, whether you're balancing an anesthetic, whether you're opening something in a safe, sterile manner and counting to 5. You're all there in this wonderful act of service for the patient under the drapes, or the human being under the drapes. There's something really quite profound about that.
Yeah, work being, I always look to work to be of service. It needs to be of service, no matter what it is, whether you're doing a LinkedIn status update or cutting open somebody. Is this of service to the people that I have an ability to serve in this world?
Yeah.
And if it isn't, then don't do it. And if it is, then it will feel great.
I love that. I love that. And I'm so happy with what I'm doing right now, because I'm now moving into education, and I have never felt more like a nurse than being of service for my students. And they are frustrating, and they are demanding, and they are entitled. And when I get an email from the same person about the same thing, and I'm like, can you listen to me? I'm like, hang on a second, take a step back. It's okay. You just have an opportunity again to reframe something again that will make them be a safe practitioner.
Yes.
They're asking because they want to be safe, not because they want to annoy you or because they haven't listened. They want to be a safe practitioner.
That reframing, I'm sure, gets you far.
It's starting to, because I'm in a whole new different role. I found myself very burnt out. As you know, I went to Africa and volunteered for 4 weeks, and that changed my practice exponentially. And I found myself in quite a dark place when I came back, because my critical care environment, which I thoroughly enjoyed, was quite jarring and quite, it just felt really inauthentic to me to be there, when nursing and medicine can be so simple, because it has to be. And the more we felt pushed and the more we felt put upon, it kind of really squashes you, and it squashes your joy. It squashes the joy for what you initially went into nursing in the first place to be. And it was a conversation that we had at a ward meeting, where I found out that our staff allocation into how many staff that we could have in our unit was actually calculated by the number of theatres we have running, not for the amount of people that went through those theatres. It was based on bricks and mortar and not on life force. And I died a little bit when I heard that. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is above my pay grade. It's above my boss's pay grade. It's above my boss's pay grade. We're talking federal level here, government level. How can I make a difference with that? How can I make a difference to my colleagues? How can I make a difference to my patients? And the answer for me has been to move into education, because I felt so burnt out and experiencing what we're now using in terms of healthcare as moral injury. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. And at the end of last year, after all the work that we all did together last year, I knew I had to make a significant change, and I knew it wasn't going to be at the hospital. So I had one of those moments, what am I going to do? I need some help here. Give me a hand. I need a big shout out with this. And I'd just come off the back of a really successful dramatic production as well too. And it was like, I've achieved all of this. There has to be more. Ready for more. So a week later, I happened to run into a friend that I work with at the university. And she's like, come and have a talk about this. Come and have a talk about, we want to include some of your thoughts and ideas into the reflection and practice subject. So last year we're running it. We want to go out with a bang. How do you think we should do that? And reflection and practice is all about knowing, it's about who you are as a human being, not what you know. And I'm like, I've got some amazing ideas because I worked with some brilliant women last year, and this is what worked for us as a group. And it was just a casual lunch. And then I ran into a couple of other colleagues. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'd really like to explore this. I think I'm ready for a PhD, and I'm really unsettled at the moment. And that led into me being contacted to take some workshops, because I can talk for 4 hours underwater without a drama. It's no problem. You may have noticed. And then it went from taking the workshops to, well, would you like to write some workshops? We'd like to take this particular subject and make it a little bit different, a bit experimental. Would you be open to that? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd do that. Come and have a meeting. And then I went and had the meeting, and they said, look, please don't take this the wrong way, but we're desperate. We would like someone to subject coordinate. And I'm like, well, what does that involve? And they're like, well, you will give you a subject, this subject. It's in the Masters of Mental Health. I'm like, I need to stop you right there. I said, you do know that I do not have a master's. And our head of school was like, yeah, I know this. You have a Bachelor of Honours. It's fine. You do know that I'm not a mental health nurse. Yes. But you know about health behaviour change, and you know about motivational interviewing. I'm like, well, yes. We'd like to give you the opportunity. Will you take it? And I said yes.
I have like chills right now. I think so much about life and work and progress and learning is that I said yes.
So then you find yourself in a position that on paper, technically you're not qualified for, but you are absolutely qualified for. And then they say, have an office. We'll put your name on the door. And I'm like, really? And in a kind of sad twist of fate. So the office that I'm inhabiting is the office of a dear friend and colleague of mine who mentored me during my undergraduate years and during my new grad year. And she's been quite unwell. So I feel, and it's her subject and it's her baby. So I feel like I'm keeping this subject warm for her.
And that's a really beautiful feeling.
I felt really guilty about it initially. I'm like, oh, this is her subject. This is she designed it, and it's literally part of who she is as a human being is interwoven into the way the modules are set up. And that's lovely. Like, it's got her voice in there. But if you mentor someone, and it's like I said earlier about putting together your own Frankenstein's monster of practice. So I feel like I've added a little layer of her into what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the head of school, who is amazing and inspirational and transformational, slightly terrifying, has given me, do what you want with this. If you want to tweak it. If you want to adjust it. And my student evaluations came back, and students are happy.
Amazing.
I've got to write workshops. I've got to create workshops. I get to write a whole new assessment task because they've extended my contract until the end of this year.
It's a very clear why. Your energy around this is infectious.
But here's the thing, like, nothing exists in a vacuum. And on the corridor where all the offices are, it's called the Corridor of Awesome. We've called ourselves the Corridor of Awesome. People that tutored me at uni, there are people that I've worked with in the hospital, there are people that have mentored me, and there is so much laughter and enjoyment and co-creation. So we now have weeks where we'll go into each other's classrooms and we'll teach. So there's 1 week of the semester, it's called week 3, come teach with me. And you'll go and you'll teach with a colleague. And they will have week 4 open door. So anyone can come into your classroom and participate. Like, any of the academics can come in and join in or just be there and listen or take part. And it's such an inclusive place to work. And it's all, I've got this amazing idea for a paper. Well, okay, how can we make this work? let's all brainstorm together. Let's all have a read and share our expertise. And it's an exciting time to be in nursing with that amount of sharing, because who's going to benefit? The students are going to benefit.
And then the lives that they'll touch because of that are countless.
Yeah. So we might not be the agents of change to change the system, but the people that we are coming into contact with every day are going to be the ones to do that. And if that isn't servant leadership, Cass, I don't know what is.
It for sure is.
And it's exactly where I'm supposed to be.
What a resonant feeling.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And you know what's also really lovely? We've got a couple of really lovely moon circles now in our area. And I go with a couple of colleagues to full moon ceremony. We'll all take a moment to acknowledge where we sit in that scheme of things as well too. And I plan my tutorials around the lunar phases now as well.
Interesting.
Different energy. And we've also incorporated meditation and journal practice into some of our subjects as well.
I think there's so much power in journaling practice and meditation, and just in, how intentional you are and how involved you are in your own decision making.
It's crazy.
It is.
And then every 2 weeks they put money into my bank account for doing what I would probably do for free. It's such a joy. And I never imagined in a million years as a 16-year-old girl being told that I wasn't enough. Man, never tell a 16-year-old girl who's at such a vulnerable place that they're not enough, because they'll believe that, and they'll believe that for a long time until they don't.
I'm so glad that you got to a place where you didn't believe that anymore.
So am I. I'm just, the help was always there when I asked for it.
Mm-hmm.
But you always have to ask.
Yes. You have to ask for what you want. You have to ask for what you want.
And it can just be something simple as just thinking, I really want to do this. And because it comes from here to here to here to here, that lining up of your intention, and then that opens the door somewhere.
I've never considered the chakra alignment of an ask being critical to it unlocking the door. But now that you've whispered that insight, I feel like my day is going to be spent exploring that.
but I think it's really important where it sits for you. I know that once it sits for me, like in my womb space almost, where I feel that resonance, that's when my magic happens. It's at my fundamental female essence where I have found my most innate strength from.
Amazing. Suzi, I could literally talk to you all day. I want to have a day in my life where that is my reality.
That will happen, my friend.
It will. I'm asking. I'm asking for it, so it will happen.
It will happen. We will be in a room together, and that day will be magical. It was one of my biggest dreams of the last coaching program that we were on together, was to have that with one of our colleagues, Hope Eaton. And we'd arranged a wonderful meeting place at platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross, and we ended up meeting in the girls' toilets. And it was perfect, and that was magic of all its own. But I'm so grateful to have amazing women who, like yourself, in my life, who inspire me daily. And I'm so grateful for the technology that we have to be able to do this.
Same. Just same. All of it. All right, I've got a lightning round of questions for you, and then we'll wrap up. What is your go-to jam when you need to up your energy?
Tonight Alive's Underworld.
Whole album. Nice. What time do you wake up?
I wake up at 6, but I get up at 8:30.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite ritual?
Oh, my favorite ritual is my Friday night Grey's Anatomy ritual.
Nice. I'm in Seattle right now. For those that are
so jealous of that. I have Grey's Anatomy envy right now.
there's Meredith isn't actually here, which is a huge disappointment to me. I wanted to run into her on the street and be like, hey, high five.
It's on my 10 list of things to do before I die is to have lunch with Ellen Pompeo.
That would be epic. Agreed.
Yeah.
Ask. I guess that's the first thing to do, right?
I've been asking a lot for that. I'm very patient.
I love that. You're very patient. There's something really we're going to have another chat, Suzi, because I want to talk about that. This idea of being very patient for when you want something. I want to talk about that more. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Cass. The people who be listening to this don't know I can actually see Cass right now, and my heart is so full.
Oh, mine too. Mine too. Okay. We'll talk again soon, Suzi.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure is mine.